Welcome to Let's Talk Near Death, the podcast show where we talk about life, death, and experiences somewhere in between. I'm Kirsty Salisbury, the host of the show, and join me as I talk to everyday people with not so everyday experiences. Let's talk near death.
At 11 o'clock in the morning in Paris, France, I fell to the ground screaming and thrashing with the most acute pain I'd ever experienced in my life. I was an atheist, and then I had this sense we're going faster and faster. Went back in history, we went forward into the future. I felt better than I'd ever felt in my entire life. I felt absolutely wonderful. If you love the person that you're with, it's going to change the world.
My guest today is near-death experiencer Howard Storm. Howard had his experience whilst he was visiting Paris in France, after a severe medical event left him with a perforated stomach. Howard has written 4 books based on his experience, and today he shares how his journey has completely transformed him and his beliefs, and how things have never been the same since. Howard, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Most welcome.
Tell us a little bit about how it all started. What took place right back in the beginning?
Well, sort of a quick outline of my NDE. It happened June 1, 1985. At that time, I was a full professor at a university in Kentucky, art professor. And I was taking a group of students around Europe. I was an atheist. I was a hedonist. I was obsessed with my success as an artist. That's the only thing that mattered to me, and everything else was secondary, which is pretty prevalent in the arts, that you've got to be, just completely ego-driven if you want to get anywhere in any of the arts. It's kind of like a requirement. It seemed, so we thought. And the last day of a 3-week art tour, I was taking a group of students around. We'd been all over. At 11 o'clock in the morning in Paris, France, I fell to the ground screaming and thrashing with the most acute pain I'd ever experienced in my life. And my wife called the desk at the hotel we were at, and they called it emergency medical service, and a doctor came very quickly and told me that I had perforated my duodenum, which is the small stomach. And the pain was that the gastric acids and enzymes and digestive juices, etc., were all leaking out into my abdominal cavity. Wow. And it felt like fire. It felt exactly like you taken a red hot ember out of the barbecue and put it in the middle of my gut. It was incredibly painful. And he told me that I had to have surgery immediately or I would die in a few hours. So he called an ambulance, and they took me on a amazing ride through Paris, going like 80, 90 miles an hour to the big city hospital, taken to an emergency room, examined by 2 doctors. They took my medical history, x-rayed me, and confirmed what the doctor at the hotel had said, and that they were sending me off to have surgery immediately, and there was no time to waste. The critical nature of the situation has been confirmed by every single doctor I've ever talked to. And I've talked, I bring it, if I meet a doctor, if they, especially if they're gastrointestinal people, I always bring it up because I want their opinion. I always say, yeah, you only had a few hours to live. You die. And so I was sent to the surgical hospital, but because it was a Saturday, it just so happened that there was no surgeon there.
Oh, nice.
So I didn't know that. Nobody told me that. So they parked me on a bed, and for the next 10 hours, I never saw a doctor.
10 hours?
Yeah. And the pain, which had been a point in my abdomen, became from my groin up to my shoulders. And it was getting impossible to breathe anymore. And I was very, very weak. what was happening was I was becoming incredibly septic,
Yeah.
because the stuff that digests your food had migrated throughout my whole abdominal cavity. And so I'm kind of digesting myself from the inside.
Mm.
Um, at 8:30 that night, a nurse came in the room and said they were unable to locate a doctor and they would try and get one the next day. For hours, I knew I was dying, and I was terrified of dying because I knew that when you died, um, that was it. There's nothing else. You're alive, then you're dead. On, off, binary choice.
Mm.
No third option. And it was terrifying because I was 38 years old. I was building a career. I had a wife and 2 kids, and I, I really didn't want to die. It's like, but now I was at the point was this pain and the situation I'm in is impossible to bear any longer.
Mm.
So I said to my wife, it's time for us to say goodbye. And we made our very tearful goodbyes. And I closed my eyes to give into it, just let go. And it was really, really easy to do. It was just stop fighting it with all my might. Stop trying to breathe, which was very, very hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
Breathing was very hard to do.
Mm.
And when unconscious, awoke from my unconsciousness, I felt better than I'd ever felt in my entire life. I felt absolutely wonderful. I did a reality check and I realized that all my senses were greater than they'd ever been.
Mm.
I tried to communicate with my wife and my French roommate. Neither of them responded to me at all, which made me very angry. Because I started off nice, but then I was yelling and screaming at them, and got nothing. I mean, of course they weren't aware of me. And then to my horror and confusion, I realized that in the bed that I had been in, there was a body that looked exactly like me that was dead. And I knew that that was impossible because I was more alive than I'd ever been.
Yeah.
So that made no sense, which was very disturbing. And I heard people calling me by name outside the room. And they were saying, Howard, come, hurry, let's go. And I went over to the room and out in the hallway, which was very gray and hazy, fuzzy. There was a group of people. And I said, I'm sick. I need a doctor. I've been waiting for a doctor. And they said, we know all about you. We've been waiting for you a long time. Hurry, come with us now. So I assumed that they were staff to take me to the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Because they didn't deny it, and they kind of suggested that that's why they were there, but they didn't say it. And I went with them, and we walked, and they encircled me. And as we walked through the hallway after, there's no sense of time here. So when I talk about time, I'm only suggesting what it might be like if I were in this world.
Mm.
But we walked for days, weeks, I don't know, maybe longer. And the crowd around me kept getting bigger and bigger. And their tone started to get rude. And then it got hostile and really scary. And I said to them, I'm not going with you any further. And they said, yes, you're going further. And so we had a physical fight. And there were a lot of them and one of me. And of course, I'm losing.
Mm.
And eventually, the fighting turned into them biting me and scratching me, and then them ripping pieces of me off and invading my orifices.
Oh,
And then I don't talk about it anymore because it's too gross and disturbing to me. I have to emotionally distance myself from all this stuff. Otherwise, I wouldn't be talking.
Yeah.
So I'm lying on the floor of that place, and I'm all ripped up. And I heard my voice say, pray to God, and I thought, I don't believe in God. And the voice said, pray to God, and I thought, I don't know how to pray. I can't pray. And the voice said, pray to God, and I thought, okay. When I was a little boy, I went to Sunday school, and we learned some prayers, and I was trying to remember what they were, and I couldn't think of them. All I could think of was things that I'd memorized as a child, like the Pledge of Allegiance and Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address and Shakespeare and stuff like that. And then finally I came upon the Lord is my shepherd.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, just that was it. And then I thought of our Father who art in heaven. And so I gave him a try, those little phrases, and the people around me became incredibly angry. And they were saying to me in language that is so gross that I can't repeat it. But they were saying, there is no God, nobody can hear you except us, and we are going to make things much worse for you if you don't stop that immediately. But along with their threats, they were also backing away from me fairly rapidly because they didn't want to hear any mention of God. So I started hurling very clumsy, crude things about God. Like God hates you and he's going to get you for what you did to me and stuff like that. And soon they were gone. I had chased them away with my very, very poor, theological statements, which I didn't believe in, by the way.
Oh, you didn't at that time?
No, they just worked. I mean, it's like this stuff's working, so it's like, wow, this is great.
Keep going.
And so I left alone in that place, and I thought about my life, and a long time to think about my life, and came to the conclusion that I had not been a very good son to my mother and father. I had not been a very good brother to my sisters. I had not been a good husband to my wife. I had not been the father that I should have been or could have been to my children. I had not been a real friend to my friends or to my students. I thought about my life, and I certainly wasn't the big, important, great artist that I had hoped to be and pretended that I was. And I realized my whole life was like a failure. I'd misspent it, but I had no idea what I didn't know what the alternative was. I just knew that what I had done with my life was a big kind of nothing, And I realized that I had gone down the cesspool into the cesspool. Do you have septic tanks in New Zealand?
Yeah, we do. We've got them in our backyard, actually.
Okay. Well, I realized that I'd gone down the sewer pipe into the septic tank, and they had come, my welcoming committee had come to take me into the septic tank, and what they wanted to do was to immerse me deeper into it, because my life was garbage, and I'm using nice language here, and that was my just dessert for the life that I'd lived, and that the people that had taken me down there were people that had lived lives like mine. Selfish people, egocentric people, which is what I was, and people who had no use for God or anything connected with it. So I figured that this was it. This was my existence now. And very, very deep despair, impossible to, can't even begin to think about how deep that despair was about that prospect. And my mind went to myself as a child in a Sunday school classroom singing Jesus Loves Me. And when my mind went there, it was very vivid, and I remembered the situation visually, but I also, more importantly, I felt what I'd felt as like a little, maybe 8 or 9-year-old boy, thinking that there was this really super guy, really nice man with the beard and the long hair, and the robe, who loved me and cared about me. And when I was a little boy and had nightmares, I'd pray, and when I prayed, it would chase the lions and tigers and bears away, and he protected me, and I thought he was my friend. and I wanted a friend. So I called out to him, and I had no idea whether he existed or whether he could hear me or why would he bother with me since I had done nothing but insult him for my whole adult life, um, by denying him, denying that he existed. And he came. And first as a tiny point of light, and it got impossibly brilliant white light over me, and out of the light came hands and arms, reached down and touched me. And when he touched me, this was the first time I'd seen myself since I'd gone into that darkness, and I was all gore.
Mm.
And I, within a few seconds, was made whole, and all the pain was gone. But much more importantly, that was he filled me with his love, which is impossible to describe, because we have no language to describe that kind of love. And his hands went behind my back, and he gently picked me up and embraced me very firmly and rubbed my back.
Wow.
Very nicely, very gently.
Yeah.
And so I buried my face in his chest and cried like a baby.
Yeah.
Which I'd never done in my adult life. And I was doing that, and I realized we are lifting out of that place. And then I had this sense we're going faster and faster out of the darkness. And then I realized we're headed towards light. So I turned my head out of his chest to look at where we were going. And I saw what at first I thought was a galaxy, a huge galaxy of light, and all these different lights going in and out of the galaxy and all this activity. And then I realized that we were going to where God lived, and which I like to refer to as home. And I thought to myself, he's made a terrible mistake. I'm garbage, and he should put me back where he found me.
Oh, really?
Because I felt so filthy,
Yeah.
And we stopped outside of the galaxy, which heaven, home, God's house. And he said to me spoke to me for the first time telepathically and said, we don't make mistakes, you belong here. And I thought to myself, how does he know what I thought? Because I didn't say that. And he said, I know everything you've ever thought. And I thought, oh, there's lots of things I've thought that I don't want you to know that I've thought. And immediately I started thinking about all the things that I'd thought about that I didn't want him to know that I'd thought about. And he laughed and laughed and laughed. Thought that was really funny, because he saw the irony of like me thinking about the things that I didn't want. Me thinking about the things.
Yeah.
We began to converse, and I was greatly relaxed because he thought that my bad thoughts were funny.
Yeah.
And we conversed, and then he said he had some friends he wanted me to meet, and he called out, and a group of what I refer to as angels came. And he said that they had recorded my life, and they wanted to show me my life, which I thought, being the egotist that I was, I thought, oh, well, great, we get to see my life,
Yeah.
And we started watching it. It was great fun. But as I became a teenager, and the dysfunctional elements in my home life and school and in myself and all that I became emotionally very withdrawn from people, because interacting with people always ended up badly. I always ended up getting hurt, And so I, as a teenager, stopped going to church and decided I was an existentialist, and was reading, started off with like Nietzsche, and then Albert Camus, and Jean-Paul Sartre, and Martin Heidegger, and all that stuff. And, when I went to college at the age of 17 and had one of my first classes was philosophy with an atheist who confirmed my unbeliefs.
Mm. Yeah.
And so the focus of my life was, I'm alone in this world. It's a dog eat dog world, and I got to be a big bad bear if I'm going to be successful. Because
Yeah.
so I was a very alpha driven type person. Jesus and the angels were very, very disappointed and saddened by the course of my life. And it was very evident that the only thing that they really cared about was whether I had been compassionate towards other people or not. As my life progressed, my acts of compassion were fewer and fewer because I didn't have the time or the interest in caring about other people. I only cared about my work, my career. So my life review was a real disaster. And when it was done, Jesus said, "Do you have any questions?" And I said, "I've got a million questions." And so I asked him everything that I could think of at that time to ask him. And he answered everything. He showed me things. We went places. We went back in history. We went forward into the future. We had many wonderful adventures together.
Was that outside of your lifetime as well? You're talking about going back and forward in future.
Oh yeah.
So not
Way
just your
back.
lifetime. Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
We went back to 2,000 years ago, Roman Empire, and we went into a bright and beautiful future of this planet.
Yeah. Wow.
We also saw catastrophic things happen in this world in the future, etc. So anyways, when it was all done, I said, "Now I want to go to heaven." He'd given me a tour of heaven, and he said, "No, you need to go back. You're not fit for heaven yet. You don't have the right character."
Oh man, how
So
did
go
that make you
back to
feel?
the world. And so we had a huge argument.
Yeah.
And I argued as vigorously as possible for me to go to heaven and why he wouldn't send me back to a horrible place like the earth. And he defeated all my arguments. And finally, I had to accept that he was right and I was wrong. And so I agreed to come back. And when I did, I was slammed right back into the body, in the bed, in the pain. And immediately when I returned, the nurse who had been in the room a half an hour earlier came back and said, "The doctor's arrived at the hospital and we're going to prepare you for surgery," which I had at 10 o'clock that night.
Wow. And obviously the surgery went well. Tell us about what happened after that.
The surgery was a complete disaster, yeah. And
in what way?
God told me audibly that I had to come to the United States or I was going to die in that hospital. So a week after the surgery, I left that hospital against their wishes. I was very, very sick. Got on a plane, came home, and was admitted into a hospital in critical condition. Double pneumonia, 2 collapsed lungs, but most importantly, extremely septic.
Yeah.
And I was in that hospital for a couple months, and they were trying to get me well enough so that they could then do another surgery to try and repair the adhesions and scarifications inside me, which I had.
Yeah. Wow. Can we just backtrack a little bit in your experience? Did you know that you had died?
Oh, I finally figured it out. Yeah.
Because you talked about being in the hospital room and seeing the dead body in the thing and nobody can hear you and you're getting frustrated that nobody's responding to you. Did you realize at that point that you died, or was it when you went down into what you talk about, the septic?
No, I was terrified that that body in the bed meant I had died, but I wouldn't accept it because I felt great.
Right. Okay. Because you were outside of your body and an illness.
My belief system was that when you die, it's over. And here I am standing there looking at the dead, at a piece of meat,
Yeah.
going, that can't be.
Yeah. So was your mind on overdrive trying to work it out, or were you
Oh
at
yeah,
a state of
yeah. It's
exhaustion?
all very, very confusing.
Yeah. Okay. And then you went down, you went with these people in the hallway. You talk about how you went down into this horrible place where the fighting began and they started abusing you and hurting you physically. Were you aware that you didn't have a body, or, you know, mine's
But the
on
opposite,
overdrive.
my whole consciousness is that I was a body.
Right. So then how can they harm you if you're not a body?
I was a body. In the in the future, we are what we think we are.
Wow. Okay.
The people in hell don't know that they're the children of God.
Right. So do
So
you,
they think they're a bunch of rats in a cage. So that's how they behave, and that's
right,
how they
okay.
experience their existence.
So do you think that any one of those people, they could have had the same experience as you did when you started to call out to God and started to say the Lord's Prayer and these things where then the light came? Do you think any one of those potentially had the same possibility to do that?
And not only do I think it, but the Bible talks about it, that Jesus, when he was crucified, went to hell and preached to the souls in prison.
Yeah.
And many of them were saved, taken out of hell.
So is it too late for those people who you saw and experienced?
It's never too late.
Never too late. Yeah.
God
Wow.
doesn't want people to be in hell.
Yeah.
People choose it. I mean, that's the thing that's so sad. People make these choices, you know.
Mm.
And I'm not just talking about saying, "Oh, I believe." I mean, I don't put much credence and stuff like that. It's how you live.
Mm.
It's how you treat the cashier at the grocery store. It's how you treat your mother and father, how you treat your wife or husband. It's how you treat your children. It's how you treat your colleagues. That's what life is about. That's the reality. All the I believe this and I believe that. That's all a lot of hooey.
Mm.
You
So
know.
did you come back with one underlying message? And I speak to a lot of people who say it's all about love, it's all about compassion. Did you come
I
back?
wrote a book. I wrote a book. The title of it is "It's All About Love." It's
It's
all
all
love.
about love. Okay.
It's all love.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean, that's all I have to tell anybody is like love one another. But I want to give them something a little more concrete than that. So I tell them, follow Jesus, because he is the example of what love is all about.
Mm.
There's no better lover in the universe than Jesus.
Yeah. Wow. And you knew straight away that that was Jesus that came to you?
Yes.
Without a doubt.
Absolutely. No doubt.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. You talk about the group of angels that were with him when you had the life review. Did Jesus stay for the life review?
Did he what?
Was he there when you had your life review as well?
Oh yeah, he was holding me the whole time.
Right. Okay. Wow. That's amazing. And did you come across any loved ones? Were any of those angels people or beings that you'd met before?
Well, they were so familiar with my life that I was concerned that some of them were deceased relatives.
Okay.
And so they said, would you like to see us in our human form? And I said, absolutely not. I don't want to know that, because I was terribly afraid that if I saw people that I knew, it would also let me know who wasn't there.
Mm.
I was always thinking the angles, you know.
Yeah.
I didn't want to know who was there because I didn't want to know who wasn't there, because, you know, everybody in my family was a mixed bag, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. But you were afraid that they would be down in the
Yeah.
hell that you'd experienced. Yeah.
Yeah, because
And
some of those people down there were pretty familiar too.
oh, that was
But
my next question was, did you recognize them?
no, but they seemed awfully familiar.
Yeah.
Some of them.
Oh, wow. What an experience. Um, how are you today? Is your health okay? Have you recovered physically as much as you can? Like, I understand there'll always be some emotional stuff that goes with it. But physically,
Well,
have you recovered well?
the doctors told me that I didn't have much of a life expectancy because I'd been critically ill for so long and had a lot of organ failure and stuff.
Mm,
And that was 34 years ago. And I'm I'm cooking along here, doing stuff. And
yeah.
so I don't know how long God wants me around, but seems to be no immediate end in sight, whatever, because I'm
Mm,
ready. I mean, I'm so ready, whenever.
mm,
Uh, but I've got business to take care. I've got an adorable wife, and I need to um, take care of her for a little while longer. And I've got 10 grandchildren,
oh, wow.
6 children.
Yeah. It's a big
So
family.
I've got some stuff to you know take care of.
Yeah. And did you come back with any kind of instruction or understanding of anything you had to do when you came back to your body?
Yes, very much so. I had a big discussion. I asked Jesus what to. I said, if you send me back, what do you want me to do? And he
Mm,
said, love the person that you're with. And I said, okay, fine. What else do you want me to do? And he said, that's what I want you to do, is love your person you're with. And I said, that's really simple. What good's that going to do? And he said, if you love the person that you're with, it's going to change the world. And I said, no, it won't. I said, me loving somebody isn't going to change the world. Um, and he said, if you love someone, they'll go carry that love with them, and they'll take it to another person, and they'll take it to another person. They'll have a ripple effect.
oh, yeah.
I said,
Wow.
yeah, well, like I love someone, and then they step out off the curb into the street and get hit by a car, and that's the end of the whole thing, right? He said, no, 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 no. He said, there's millions of people in this plan. Called it God's plan.
Mm,
And I said, well, at the time there were 6 million people in the world. Now there's billion.
yeah.
And at the time it was 6 billion. And I said, the 6 billion people in the world, having a few million trying to do this love plan thing isn't enough. The world's too cruel. And he said, well, we have the angels. And I said, how many angels do you have? He said, billions and billions of angels. And I said, well, with the millions of people and the billions of angels, I don't see the world changing. And he said, it's God's plan. And I went, okay. you know, I mean, I don't know how to argue about that.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
pulls out
Exactly.
the big, the big argument and shoots me down. There's not much left to say. So I asked him. I said, I'd like to build you something. I'd like to build a shrine to you. And he said, please don't. I don't want it. Don't need it.
Yeah.
Uh, and that kind of frustrated me because I thought that was the best I had to offer was make a shrine.
Mm,
I even described it to him in detail. I was going to buy some rural land out in the country and devote the rest of my life to building something wild and crazy.
mm,
Um, anyhow, so 34 years I've been in the plan,
mm.
which is to do my best to love people. And what I thought was so simple and so easy turns out to be the hardest work I've ever done in my life. And it's not easy. And sometimes I do well, and sometimes I fail.
Mm.
Um, but it's okay because all as he expects, he made this amply clear to me. All he expects is for us to do our best, and he
Mm.
knows we're going to make lots of mistakes, and that's fine.
Mm. It's a relief to know, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And how is it? Do you feel quite a strong connection still to Jesus?
Yes.
Feel do you feel like maybe your connection is stronger after what you've been through than, I don't know, just everyday people who haven't had the NDE experience?
Yes. I don't want to boast, but to put it in down under tuck, he and I are mates.
Love it. That's so special. It's so
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Yeah. Is there any other, is there any message you want to share with the listeners? Any one great thing? Or I know you've written your book. I'd love to hear more about your book. But is there any one thing that's really on your heart to share with people who are looking at these experiences?
Um, I think that what Jesus told me to do is what he would probably tell anyone and everyone the same thing. Matter of fact, one of the reasons why I'm so excited to be part of the church, although, you know, it can be a very messy business because a lot of people, you know, if you could get all the people out of the church, it'd be just absolutely perfect. But unfortunately, people
Yeah.
are involved. But the big message that Jesus says repeatedly in the Bible is love one another. This is my commandment, love one another. And he lived it to the best of his ability, given the circumstances that he was in. In the Roman Empire, not easy being a loving person. And over 2,000 years, a lot of people, a lot of good people, both saints and people that were saints that were never recognized as saints. Like there've been a lot of grandmas and grandpas that were saints that never got sanctified by the church, but they're as big a saint as anyone ever was, you know. My mom was a saint. Nobody will ever know her except me and my sisters. You know, she loved to the best of her ability, made very, very few errors, you know, in life.
Wow.
And nobody will know her except that she gave me and my sisters quite a gift of love, you know. That's our job, to go around and try and be as loving as possible and contribute to the world, and according to whatever gifts we've been given, you know, talents, abilities, things like that. Like I'll never be a ballet dancer, you know. That that's out, you know. It's way too late too, but
Yeah.
but I did have other gifts. I make really good stone walls.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm
beautiful.
I'm good at laying fieldstone. It's one of my gifts I got from my grandfather.
Yeah. So do you believe that we have a purpose in things we have to do or things we're challenged to do in this lifetime aside of loving the best that we can?
I think one of the challenges is to live in the present. Um, you know, I'm a professional. You know, I ran after my experience, I ran a big art department at a university, and then I went to seminary and got a master's of divinity degree and pastored churches, which is like running small businesses. So, you know, that's the nuts and bolts day-to-day stuff that you have to do. That's typically not very much fun, but you do it because it's important, and it's important to other people. And try and grow individually, spiritually. You know, I pray, I take retreats, I have time for myself. I'm a very avid flower gardener.
Nice.
And it's a way for me to commune with God. My painting is a way that I commune with God.
Yeah.
I believe that I've always had doggies, and I believe that the dogs are all gifts from God, because dogs are the best teachers in the world. You know, because they practice unconditional love.
Oh, yeah, they do, don't they?
More than any human being ever could.
Yeah.
You know. So I try to live in peace and joy all the time. And try and respond to the circumstances that I find myself in.
Howard Storm, thank you so much. You've got my mind on overdrive thinking of all the different things. When you see Jesus, I think about all the questions I would have for him, and your experience. It's so detailed and so complete at the same time. So Howard, thank you for coming on and sharing your experience. This has been amazing.
Most welcome. Pleasure talking with you.
Thanks for joining me for this episode of the Let's Talk Near Death podcast show. If you've enjoyed it, please share it with your friends, tell people about it. I'd love to get these messages out there. You can also connect with me on Facebook at Kirsty Salisbury Official, and you can subscribe to receive updates for new episodes as they come about. I'm Kirsty Salisbury, and this is Let's Talk Near Death.